to the April 19th, 2022 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, and that's General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until July 15, 2022, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via in-person and remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and our conference ID is 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And again, welcome everyone. Just remind everyone to please, those of you online, to mute your mic and turn off your camera until you're recognized. And let's start with a roll call. We'll start with our Vice Chair, Shireen Davis.
Present.
Our Clerk, Corey Metters.
Present.
Select Board Member Dean Castro.
Present.
And Select Board Member Jeff Dykins.
Present.
And the Chair, Peter Kokolas, is present. Just a real quick overview of our meeting tonight. We'll start with the minutes of April 12th. Then we'll ask for some public announcements or agenda items from the public or from the board. Then we'll get into new business, and the first thing up in new business is a public hearing on a transfer of a liquor license for the Wayside Inn. Then we have public comments on the following agenda items, with the exception of the food vending, which we'll have public comments during that time. And the business agenda items are Arbor Day proclamation, the Friends of Trees, and Dan Young will be able to present at that time. Then we have a Town Landing special use permit, Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, Cynthia Wygren. Then we talk about our mobile food vending regulations. Then we get into a PFAS source investigation given by Dr. Duncanson, but it was a request by Gloria Freeman last week. And then we consider, then we get into Chatham and Orleans Nauset Beach Agreement and a review with Dr. Duncanson and two members of our board that were involved. And then we look at numerous approvals and release of executive session minutes. Ended up for the public part of the meeting with committee appointments on the Cultural Council and Summer Residence Advisory. And then we go into executive session and don't return to a public meeting. So, given all of that, I'm sure everybody got all that. It's always interesting. But anyway, let's start with the agenda of the minutes, April 12, 2022. Any
Motion to approve.
Sure? I mean, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. A motion to approve. A second. Any changes?
No.
None. Okay, let's have a vote. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Next, we have public announcement and agenda item requests. Any from the board? Staff?
Mr. Chair, I think Dr. Duncanson wanted to do a COVID update.
Okay. Dr. Duncanson? Welcome, Bob. Dr. Bob?
Yes, good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing a quick COVID-19 update. I just wanted to give this because we haven't given one in a while, and I just want the board and the community to be aware of where we are at in this, because we are still in a pandemic, even though things are changing. So if you let me share my screen here. The first thing I just wanted to show is our monthly case count that we've been showing pretty much since the beginning of the pandemic. And in the blue bars, you can see that things have dropped off substantially through March compared to where we were at the beginning of the year. So that is the good news. The not so good news is we had a total of 8 cases, confirmed cases reported to the state in March. So far in April, and we are now at the 19th of April, we've had 32 confirmed cases so far in April. So unlike the first 2 years of the pandemic where we saw, a winter surge, if you will, and then things dropped off fairly dramatically through the summer months, this year we apparently are seeing a later surge or an earlier surge compared to where we've seen it in some previous years. Let me show you just quickly the weekly case count numbers. This is something we've been showing this year to put in a little bit better perspective. And you may remember at the beginning of this year, in January and into February, we were up to around 50 cases or so a week. And then, starting in February, things dropped off fairly dramatically. They stayed fairly low through most of March. We actually had a couple of weeks where we didn't report any new cases. But you can see we've seen a gradual uptick and a fairly substantial uptick in the last couple of weeks. We were at 8 cases for the week of April 2nd through the 8th. And then we jumped up between the 4th and the 15th. We jumped up to 18 cases. So we more than doubled in a week what our previous week has been. And then just quickly, our percent positivity, which was, again, doing very well. And you can see in the most recent reporting period, which ended on the 14th of this month, and this data covers the previous 2 weeks. Unfortunately, we were back above that 5% line, where generally anything above 5% is considered widespread transmission within a community. So while we've been down after that peak of the Omicron surge, we've definitely seeing things increase back up again. And for the week ending 4/14, we were the second highest town on the Cape in terms of our percent positivity. And then just quickly, our average daily incident rate, you can see that has also been increasing. And for the week ending 4/14, we were actually the highest town on the Cape in terms of average daily incident rate at roughly 18. Barnstable County was at 10, so we were almost 10 times or twice the average of Barnstable County, and we were just about the same as the statewide average. So the bottom line here that I just wanted to speak to is the COVID-19 condition, if you will, is not over. Even though the CDC has dropped the nationwide mask mandate for public transportation, that I'm sure everybody heard took place yesterday. The MBTA has dropped their mask requirement, and other organizations and entities are doing so as well. This is not over yet. We are still in a pandemic, according to the World Health Organization and the CDC. So again, I just urge everyone to take appropriate precautions. We know what works, masking and testing and staying home if you're sick. So hopefully this little increase that we're right in the midst of now does not continue. We didn't see anything after school vacation week back in February. Hopefully we don't see anything after school vacation week this time around either. So I just wanted to reiterate to folks that, we need to continue to be vigilant, even though things are becoming more and more positive on a worldwide basis. It is not over, and if you're susceptible to COVID-19 or you're not fully vaccinated, it can still have a fairly negative outcome. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. I have Dean and then Corey and Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you, Bob. Just with respect to the recent uptick, do we have any information as to how symptomatic those 32 cases are?
I do not have any specifics. However, we know that most of the cases with the B2 variant, which is the predominant variant right now, for the most part are either in asymptomatic individuals or the symptoms are very mild, as we saw with Omicron.
Do we know anything about the S variant that is, we're hearing some news about in recent weeks? Is the state saying?
Nothing specific. It's not very widespread in the U.S. It does appear to be even more contagious, if you will, than the B2 variant, and that was more contagious than Omicron. But it does not appear to be causing severe illness. So it's like Omicron and the B2 variant. While they're more contagious, they do not appear to be causing severe disease.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob, on the 32 individuals, do we have any breakdown of data as far as like an older population, younger population, vaccinated, unvaccinated, partially vaccinated? Any details that you can provide?
Vaccination was about 50-50. And the age, quite honestly, was all across the spectrum. We had some as young as 12 and 13. And then I think the oldest one in these 32 cases was 71 years old. So it was spread right across the age range.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob, for that update. I thought this was in the rearview mirror, and I think that's totally naive, I guess. But for those age 65 or older, is the guidance still to get a second booster?
Anyone 50 years of age and
50.
older is eligible for a second booster. So yes, the recommendation is to go ahead. If you're eligible or certain underlying medical conditions, you go ahead and get that second booster.
And your guidance, at least your guidance is to wear a mask. Mask up.
Masking is appropriate in the certain settings, if you will. If you're attending an indoor gathering and there are potentially people who are at higher risk, say elderly relatives or something like that, or people who are unvaccinated because they may have medical conditions that prevent them from getting vaccinated. Yes, I think it would be prudent if you're going to be in close quarters indoors to wear a mask. In terms of in public places, the grocery stores and places like that, my recent experience has been it's about 50-50 people wearing masks and not wearing masks. I've seen a definite uptick over the last 2 weeks or so of more people wearing masks, in those indoor settings because I think they're hearing more about, the increase in cases.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Shereen?
Thanks, Dr. Bob. I just wanted to know, I know that the county puts out the report on hospitalizations, and it's the understanding that the B2 variant is mild but highly contagious. The hospitalizations up with this at all?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, the hospitalizations are still low, and they generally lag 2 to 3 weeks behind, when we start to see cases going up. I think the expectation is because this B2 is, so mild, if you will, that hopefully we don't see the hospitalizations like we've seen in the past.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shereen. Any questions or comments from the public? I don't see anything or anything online. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is our public hearing on Wayside Inn liquor license. Can I have Corey read the public hearing notice?
Absolutely. Town of Chatham Select Board Public Hearing Notice. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the large meeting room at the Town Office Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, and remotely via Microsoft Teams platform to consider a request for transfer of an annual all-alcoholic beverage inn-holder license from 512 Main Street Incorporated, DBA The Wayside Inn, Shane Coughlin, manager, to TPG Chatham Beverage LLC, DBA The Chatham Wayside Inn, Jillian F. Kelly, manager, 512 Main Street, Chatham, Mass. 02633. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Signed, members of the Select Board.
Thanks, Corey. Is Jillian here? You can go to the podium, there should be a green light on the bottom of the podium, one of the mics. Just for the record, please introduce yourself, and then we'll get on with it, okay?
Do I press the button?
Is it green?
It's green.
Okay, then it's on.
Okay.
No,
no,
you're
okay.
green.
I got it. Sorry. My name is Jillian Kelly, and I am the food and beverage director at the Chatham Wayside Inn.
Okay, and Shauna?
Yes, I believe the attorney Trish Farnsworth is also participating in the call if you have any questions for her.
Hey, this is Trish Farnsworth, and I can give a brief overview if the commission desires.
Okay, thank you very much. And could you state your name once again, please?
Sure. It's Attorney Trish Farnsworth, and I'm attending because I'm out of my office in Boston today.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
I
Trish.
am remote.
Yeah, that's fine.
Jillian's-
You're welcome. Welcome, and you could, are you okay standing up there for now? Okay, go ahead, Trish.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is a transfer of the all alcohol inn holders license. So it's new ownership. It's going to remain at the same location. And we're also seeking a pledge of the license to Needham Savings Bank. My client, the proposed licensee is a, reputable hospitality company. They have a number of hotels and other resorts that they own and operate. You'll see in the package, there's quite a few listed there. But for example, the Renaissance in Providence, Rhode Island, the Sherborne Inn in Nantucket, the Champlain Resort in Block Island, and the Hilton in Dedham, just to give you a flavor. So they've purchased this property, and there are no changes planned for this year. They're just going to run it the way it's always been run as the Wayside Inn. In the future, there may be some updates or some renovations. Certainly, we'd be back before the board, if there are any changes in operations or floor plans or such. But right now, it's just going to stay the same. The new owner actually has maintained or kept on a significant number of the staff, including Jillian. And, many of them have been there, the Wayside Inn, for years. Ms. Kelly, Jillian, is going to be the manager on the license, the general manager at the hotel. She's been employed there since she was a teen. She's server trained with alcohol service and, experienced. I think she was the food and beverage manager there under Shane prior. So she's here. She can answer any questions as well, but that's the overview.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from the board? Dean, go ahead. I'm getting feedback, guys.
The reverb. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shauna, on the first page of the application where the principal is listed, I think we need to insert the city and state. It just has a street address for Elizabeth Procaccianti. I think it's a Rhode Island address. Just have a question. I guess this goes to the attorney. I noticed in the application, if you know the answer to this, there was a suspension or something back in 2019 in the town of Dedham. Was that, it was a sting operation. Was there a penalty assigned to that? Do you know? You're muted.
You're muted. I'm sorry, Trish.
Sorry about that. Yes, I actually worked on that. No, there was just a suspension that was a sting operation, a compliance check. And the individual that, actually did card, if you can believe it, and it was one of those vertical licenses and just did the math wrong. It was totally
Sure.
a huge mistake. But yes, then they did reinforced training and, they have some placards hung up about, different licenses and really what they need to look at. And I think before every shift, they also, just really pound home that you really have to, card appropriately. And if there's any questions, always just ask a manager.
No, thank you for that. I'm sure this happens too. We're still getting the reverberation.
Yeah.
And this happens to a lot of establishments, we know that, and even in this town. Shauna, do they need a lodging license too? Does that come before us?
At some point in the past, the town has rolled in the common victulars and the in-holder licenses into the alcoholic beverage licenses.
Okay.
So they would not need a separate license.
Oh, great. I just want to make a comment that, and I think we saw some of this in the newspaper. Your client is a very large operation, and that's very admirable. I think there's a tradition that your client is stepping into with the Wayside Inn in Chatham, and their involvement and commitment to the community, and we see that in the other lodging establishments. I certainly hope that going forward, the new owners will follow that tradition as well. But I'm going to be supportive of the transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Anyone else on the board? Jeff?
Yeah, I just have a nit on page 5, source of cash contribution. The name of the contributor is Elizabeth Procaccianti, and then the amount of contribution, it should be 50,000. It's just missing a zero there. And I was interested to see the plethora of properties that the Procacciantis are involved with, and was impressed. And to echo Selectman Nacastro, I just hope that the new owners bring, the same sense of community that the prior owner did, Mr. Oppenheim. Very involved in the community and very involved in the chamber and downtown and on other issues. So I just hope you guys roll up your sleeves and become viable members of the community as well. And I will certainly support the transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any others? No, I have none. I'll just echo what I heard from Dean and Jeff. Anyone from the public? I see anything online?
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Maybe Shauna can sort of clarify the pledge of license for the public.
Yeah.
Sure. There was a question several years ago about an application from Chatham Bars Inn to pledge a license. At that time, there were questions whether or not, if the inn should default, where the control of the license would land. And we did clarify again with Attorney Costello this afternoon that in any case, TPG may, if they should default in its obligation, the Needham Bank would then become, would exercise the rights with respect to the collateral license, and the bank would not be able to transfer it to any other party without coming to the board first.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please? Dean?
I move that we approve the transfer of the annual all alcohol in-holder license from 512 Main Street, Inc., doing business as the Wayside Inn, Shane Coughlin, manager, to TPG Chatham Beverage LLC, doing business as the Chatham Wayside Inn, Jillian F. Kelly, manager, 512 Main Street, Chatham.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion by the board? No, let's take a vote. Start at that end with Jeff.
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jorge?
Aye.
Shereen?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Thank you very much, Jillian and Trish, and good luck.
Great.
And welcome to Chatham.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next up, public comments on our business agenda. I'll go through these quickly. And the first is the Arbor Day proclamation. Dan, you don't have to speak yet. Okay. Any comments? Any public comments? Okay, next is town landing use permits on White Shark Conservancy. Cynthia, you don't have to speak yet. Going to make sure. Mobile food vending regulations, we're going to have discussion during that agenda item. Then we have a PFAS source investigation that was requested by Gloria Freeman. And Gloria, you'll be able to speak during the agenda item. Do I have anyone else who wants to talk to that? Speak to that, excuse me. Okay. Chatham Orleans Nauset Beach Agreement is next. All right. And then we have a number of release of executive session minutes, and the approval and release. And then we have our committee appointment. So let's move ahead with our agenda. The first thing up, Dan, you can come up now. Dan Young, Arbor Day proclamation, Friends of Trees. And I guess, Corey, you'll read the proclamation, or we'll let Dan do it. Okay, Dan. And welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Young. I'm a board member of Chatham's Friends of Trees. And by proclamation, Arbor Day is April 29th. But what is Arbor Day, and what does Arbor Day mean? Well, it can mean many things. When you think of Arbor Day and trees, make it what is important to you. It can be a walk around Chatham's Old Village to enjoy, the very large and stately trees there, or it can be a quiet walk in Kate Gould Park or Chase Park or Goose Pond Forest. Or you can plant a tree as an act of good stewardship. Or you could plant a tree that will enhance the landscape around your home or Chatham. Or you can plant a tree to replace a previously storm-fallen tree. It is also a day to where you could commemorate an event, such as a birthday, an anniversary, a graduation, or any personal achievement, or a family gathering. And it can also be a day to where you commemorate a person. You could plant a tree and make it a time synonymous with spring and the warmer weather to come. As two examples, Friends of Trees will be having a tree giveaway free at the community center on April 29th and 30th. And also, we will be planting a tree along with the town in recognition of Dan Tobin's service as the department head of Chatham's Parks and Recreation. Thank you, and happy Harbor Day.
Thank you, Dan. Would you like to read the proclamation?
I do not have it in front of me.
Oh, okay. We'll have Corey. Okay.
2022 Arbor Day Proclamation for the Town of Chatham, Massachusetts. Whereas, in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas, the holiday, called Arbor Day, was first celebrated with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce soil erosion caused by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide wildlife habitat, and whereas trees in our town increase property values, mitigate the impacts of climate change, enhance business areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy and spiritual renewal wherever they are planted. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Chatham, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the town of Chatham, Massachusetts. Further, we urge all citizens to celebrate Chatham's Arbor Day on April 29th by planting a tree, sitting beneath one, or taking a walk in the woods, or on one of Chatham's beautiful parks. Appreciating trees are for all they do for us, our town, and our planet.
Thank you, Corey. Any comments from the board? If not, you have a motion? Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, I move to proclaim Friday, April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in Chatham, Massachusetts.
Second.
Second discussion, seeing none. Shereen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Thank you, Dan. Okay. Next up is our discussion on a town landing special use permit for the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. Cynthia here? Welcome, I see you. Welcome. And if you both mics should be on when you get up there, so that's fine. You can just both introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening. I'm Marianne Walsh. I'm the Education Director at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy.
Cynthia.
Cynthia was unable to attend this evening.
That's fine, thank you.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Captain Josh Higgins with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy.
Great. So could you just give us just a quick background on what you're looking for, what you're planning to do?
Well, what we figured we'd do is, Miriam, if you want to spend a little time talking about the Conservancy, and I'll spend a little time talking about the charters.
That works. So the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy built out the Shark Center here in town in 2016 and has been providing shark education opportunities to locals and visitors alike through that facility. And over the years, we have increased the different types of programs that we offer for all ages and families, and we have people who are taking part in those programs from all over. One of the programs we are looking to expand is our ecotourism operation, so providing opportunities for families to get out on the water and view the wildlife that we have here off of our coast, and that's where this permit comes in.
Thanks, Marianne. We like to do our white shark charters out of Riders Cove. It's a very convenient location. It's close to the inlets where we often see the white sharks. Our shark trips last 2.5 to 3 hours. They're an educational trip led by a naturalist and a captain. We're supported with an aircraft to help us safely approach the white sharks in a very safe manner for our guests. Guests are provided an opportunity to film the sharks underwater with GoPro cameras. And we also have a safety component to our trip, a public safety component to our trip, where we utilize our app, the Sharktivity, which is a sightings reporting app put together and run by the Conservancy. And we've also have a system developed in all the towns along the eastern seaboard here that we work with, from Chatham to Provincetown, a way of alerting them of white shark presence on their public beaches, and for them to take that information and put it into their arranged protocol to keep their beachgoers safe. So we're looking to run our trips. We're looking to ask for permission to run the trips out of Riders Cove. We have a plan that we've proposed, and we're here to answer any questions you might have about it.
Hey, thank you. It's not only entertainment, quote, entertainment. It's a little bit of science and a little bit of taking care of our coastline too. That's interesting. The aircraft that you deal with, they take off from Chatham Airport, do you know?
Yes.
Yep.
And they're local guys?
Yes, we have several local pilots in the area, including the FBO at Chatham Airport.
Okay, thank you. Shireen?
Thank you, and I'm very supportive of your application. I just have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
As far as the spotter plane, I think it was out on North Beach or Nassau Beach last summer, and I was really fascinated. There are people that are actually doing that kind of spotting the sharks and then getting over to them and things like that. And I guess a part of me, I'm just wondering, are you partnering with other companies so there's not several planes up in the air doing the same sort of activity?
So the captains and pilots are all in communication.
Okay.
Do you want to speak to that a bit more?
Sure. I have firsthand experience with it. I listen on an aircraft radio as well, just another layer of safety.
Yep.
To advise my aircraft that's working directly with me and when his eyes are on me. But they all know each other. They're all in constant communication with each other, where they're going, and we try to spread out whenever possible. Obviously, if the sharks are together, that comes a challenge. So we're in communication on the water and in the air. Everybody who's been on the water that I've worked with the last few years have been very, very easy to work with. I don't know of any newcomers yet, but everybody that's joined the scene has been a positive addition and a good communicator.
How much are you charging for the tour?
The trips are $2,500 per trip.
Per trip, and they last, 3 hours, you said?
Up to 3.5.
Up to 3.5 hours.
Up to 3
Okay.
hours.
No guarantee to see a shark, right?
No.
No.
Never use the G word, but it's we like our odds.
The other
Just like
piece
a whale
is,
watching trip.
so I've had the experience of being up close to a great white a long time ago when my husband and I were fishing, and we helped rescue a shark out of Nashan Inlet with the state, and had an experience of being very close to the shark. Actually touched it at the end because it was so used to coming up to the boat because its behavior had been modified through the whole, attempt to release it out of Nashan Inlet. My question to you is, what kind of safety at sea instructions are you giving to the participants on the boat?
So as soon as the family, even before they board the boat, we let them know that there will be safety protocols. So there is an extensive packet, and we are in constant communication with the families before they even step foot on the dock. So they are prepared and they are aware. And then Captain Josh here, before they leave, goes through a full safety briefing. So
Absolutely. Full safety briefing with everything on board. You know, we're Coast Guard approved. We're in check with all the coastal, all the regulations. We're a little more than prepared in that department. But yeah, they're a lot of time with them, and we play it very, very safe on the water.
So it's not required, but will you require your guests to wear PFDs at all times, or?
As of
or-
now, we have a regulation under 13 years of old are required to wear a life jacket, but
Okay.
the adults are not at this time.
Right, okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Jeff? sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm supportive as well. I think it's neat. Just tell us a little bit, describe the operation at Riders Cove. That's a really busy town landing, so I just want the public to get comfortable that this won't be disruptive. It'll hopefully be additive rather than regressive here, but it's a very, very busy landing. So you're going to shuttle folks there?
Yes, so we have a shuttle plan since the Shark Center is right up the road. That's kind of one of the ideal parts that, using Riders Cove. And again, we give an extensive, leading up to the trip, a lot of it has to do with the weather conditions because these trips are weather dependent, but we're constantly discussing with the families and making sure that they have the key points so they know where to park. We try to be, Josh is really good at maneuvering the boat so that he's not taking up dock space or anything like that or disrupting other folks. And our naturalist is then in communication with the family. So let's say the boat is running 10 minutes behind, they're giving the family the heads up so they're not just like lingering or walking around or spinning around the parking lot or anything like that.
But you're going to drop folks off and then pick them up when they return? You're not-
Yes, yeah,
yes.
with the shuttle
Okay, you're
program.
not going to,
We do have a mooring in Riders Cove as well,
Right.
so between trips or if there's a delay, I have somewhere to go. I don't have to spend
Right.
time laying on the dock. I go back to the mooring. So I can come in when my guests are ready, and we touch, we grab, we go. And then we come back in, we make the transition again.
but you won't be parking a shuttle down there?
No.
No.
Good. Well, I wish you well. I think it's exciting, and a lot of folks are going to have a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So, good luck.
Thank you, Jeff. Just make a comment for the public. The Harbor Master and Community Development Department have reviewed and approved the application. So with that, can I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second, discussion. Seeing none. Shereen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Good luck. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is a mobile food vending regulations. And Shauna came back quickly with a set of regulations when I was joking about it.
So, yes, before you tonight is the first draft compiled from the comments received at the board's meeting 2 weeks ago on your policy decisions, the input received at the public forum, and discussions previously on the Needham model of regulations. The draft regulations were circulated on Friday to all of our food service establishments, letting them know about tonight's read and inviting them to participate or ask questions. The only question I received over the weekend was whether or not it was being contemplated that the food trucks would be at each location on a daily basis, or if it was going to be more random, like, not every day, 7 days a week. So that was the only concern that I had heard.
Okay. I didn't see whose hand up was first. I think it was Jeff and then Dean. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one question that's on the locations approved for direct permit mobile food. The daily 5 to sunset at Harding's Beach and Oyster Pond, 5 to sunset, is that because we have current contracts with other vendors, Shauna?
Yes, we are currently this summer will be year 2 of a 2-year contract for beach concessions. So I felt that if we keep the timing separate from when the beach concessions are running, at least for this year, we can certainly review after the year and decide if next year, rather than renewing the concession contracts, handling it in a different way under regulations.
I guess I have a couple follow-ups then.
Sure, go ahead,
Now,
Jeff.
are those contracts exclusive, Shauna? Do they say that, okay, but they don't necessarily do burgers or tortillas or?
I believe the one vendor who is an exclusive Harding's Beach, it is not the roaming ice cream truck, but I
Okay.
believe they have sandwiches and things.
They do. Okay, I'm just thinking that the mobile food vendors for lunch and a snack late in the afternoon or even for dinner, for folks at the beach, might be a good idea. So I guess the plan would be we wouldn't rush to recontract with the vendors that are currently there now, or what?
It's every 2 years, it's an RFP process.
Okay.
So whether or not the board or the town wants to continue contracting in that manner after the end of this contract would be up to the board, possibly.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I just think I'd like to get another bite at the apple, if you will, before we recontract, just
Right.
after this summer's experience. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Dean, and then Corey.
Thank you, Peter. Shauna, just two comments. A question first. The fees for the permit, did you get those from Needham as well? There's a $500 fee annually.
No, I looked at several different towns. It was really across the board, and Vice Chair Davis's comment about trying to make it comparable to, say, the docking permits, which I believe are $250. I don't know that those are utilized year-round, as this might have a longer season, so I sort of threw out $5 a day for up to 100 days.
Well, how about the penalties for violations of $100, $250, and $500?
Those are comparable to other towns.
Okay. And one other comment on the application. I know that you do require that they submit their registration, but perhaps we might have a line asking for their vehicle make and year and the registration number in the state. But otherwise, I think these are in excellent shape. They certainly reflect the discussions that we've had to date. We may get some public comment tonight, but I think we're pretty close to adopting these. Thank you. Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you, Dean. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question, I noticed on the checklist, the mobile food vendor application checklist for like ServSafe certification and everything, I'm assuming it'll probably follow all the current Board of Health, like for the brick and mortars. I mean, I know we're required to post all that stuff, so we'll have it on, any vendor would have it on their property or on their mobile property. Yes, thank you. So I think that would be just to keep everything equitable with all the other brick and mortars. My thought on the fee structure, I think the $500 is actually very inexpensive, my own personal opinion. I'm trying to understand where we would charge a breakdown of, so 100 days for basically $5 a day, or we could do an extension or a 3 or 10 block extension for $100, it would be $10 a day. So I'm just trying to, should we make it consistent on a daily quote rate? I think maybe I think that $500 could go up without any burden myself, but that's just my opinion.
My thought was in the increase for more days was in some way to address the concern that someone's going to be parked in the same spot 7 days a week for 6 months.
Okay. The only other question I have is, most of this language is focused on food vending, but I do notice on the very end of page 5, we just have the section for outdoor display of goods. Are we going to have anything on that discussion to make sure there's any clarity as other vendors that are non-food entities? Is that a phase 2 of this project?
I believe it probably will. We've
Okay.
had requests in the past from someone who had, I think, for lack of a better term, a shoemobile.
Okay.
Certainly, there are some T-shirt sales that have been going on out of back of a truck or something, so that I think if we feel comfortable after a year with how we've done with this, we can certainly then expand it to all mobile vending rather than just
To
food.
clarity and,
Yeah.
fine. No, that sounds good. Sounds fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Shereen.
So I want to make it clear this is the pilot program, obviously, so that we're not, locking into this. And I know that a vehicle registration requires insurance certification, but maybe it should say vehicle registration and insurance. The other piece on the health inspection stuff, Shauna, I can't remember, is there a default, or, I mean, is there a state permitting process for the food? So, but it starts with our health inspector, correct?
So there is a state permitting process that requires the town in which the truck is garaged to do the inspection. So that if it, say, is garaged in Yarmouth, we would have the local health report that's on the checklist is from the town of Yarmouth.
Okay. Even to operate in Chatham, they wouldn't have to have a health inspector report from Chatham?
No.
It's not required?
No.
Okay. It's where the vehicle is registered. Okay. All right. Okay. I think they look really good. I think the daily thing, I'm a little, the question that was asked about the daily versus random. I would assume that if somebody is given a location, they're going to take advantage of it.
So I listed in the application the 5 locations in the hopes that someone would contemplate, maybe I can use 20 of my days in one location on certain days of the week, or, you know, a certain time of the year. Maybe I'll use 10 nights at Oyster Pond and sort of break it up that way, so that I hope that they understand they're making an application and not saying, this is my spot, I'm going to be there.
Like an exclusive?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Was there any, I mean, should we be thinking in terms of Oyster Pond, I mean, not Oyster Pond, but I guess one of the questions I have is, should we be thinking about, well, I guess sunset in the summer is 8:30 at night. That would make sense for the, but downtown, would it make sense to expand that out past sunset? I mean, if it's going to be sitting in the parking lot of the town and, you know, getting a quick bite to eat would be kind of cool at 10 or 11 o'clock at night before you leave Chatham. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was thinking out loud. Go ahead, Corey.
No.
I was-
No. As a downtown merchant, just, I mean, again, the pilot program, you know, having something later on, I mean, some of the employees will leave their shops, who have worked all day, and grabbing a bite to eat before they go home might be an incentive. I know it used to go to different, you know, grab a slice of pizza, you know, many moons ago. We used to leave work and hit D'Angelo's on the way home before we, you know, go out for the evening. But, so I think I actually think it would be positive to have something for some of the staff who have worked all day and haven't had a chance to eat, grabbing something on their way home. So it's a pilot program. So, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to it, put it that way.
Go ahead.
So what if we expanded that to 10 PM or 11 PM? Do it a 12-hour?
Yeah.
Just because I think it brings some
Again, we're trying.
incentive to the,
Yeah, we're trial and error.
Okay.
Let's try 10 PM. Is that okay? Or did you say 11?
Well, shops close at, you know, anywhere between 8 and 10 PM, so maybe,
Oh, I'm sorry. Shauna.
One concern with that is the lighting that's available at the location. And we would just have to make sure that there's adequate lighting in whatever location is for, you know, trips, safety, security. So that's just one of the considerations and why sunset was proposed, because it would be just a rolling time when it started to get dark.
Mr. Chairman, aren't
Go ahead,
we
Dean.
talking about just the downtown lots?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I thought.
And the town offices lot is lit. The Eldridge is not, I don't think, right?
and I was just,
You were just talking the town lot.
yeah, town lot.
Right.
So do we want that 11?
Okay. Let's try it.
I had a question. I don't know if Corey or Sharina.
I'm all set, thank you.
Shauna, what is the license fee for Carmen Vichler in a brick and mortar store?
$5.
$5. Okay.
Really? Okay. Dean, we ought to rethink that. Anyway, Jeff.
I move approval.
Okay, a second, and I'll have discussion. Dean?
But that one,
We do want to get,
Oh, this is not, we can't, this is not a vote.
this is the
tonight.
first
oh,
read.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, let's see, I'll go Corey and then Dean, and then You're done? Okay, Corey.
One more question, actually. So I'm a vendor, and I want to, 100 days. I want to do a 100-day block, 20 at this place, 10 here, 10 here, and I reserve it, essentially. Is it rain or shine? What happens if I run through a stretch where I get a week of this torrential rain and I can't vend, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs as a vendor? Is it a rain or shine policy, or do they get credit for that? Like, I'm just trying to wonder how we address something like that.
Sure. My initial reaction would be if it's raining one day, then you can move that day. It's 100 in a year. So if you're getting out to December and the weather hasn't cooperated, you've only been 50 days. I mean, I'm sure we can make accommodations. We can figure it out.
Okay. Well, sometimes rainy days are the more profitable days.
Yep.
This is true.
So,
Okay, anything else? I have a couple, you said it's a pilot program. We're going to make that, put it in the regulation, or say that we're going to come back and look at it in a year? Or
Because they are your regulations, you can take them up at any time.
we don't have to have that in there? Okay. The other thing is, has to do with the local, the locations. It just says Eldridge Garage Parking, and it's daily 11 through sunset. We talked to the parking leasee guy there?
So one of the things, and as I was proposing this to be a first read without any kind of approval tonight, is we do want to regroup internally and discuss any changes that would be needed to the Chatham Valet contract, which would be up for renewal this year. Go over the locations more specifically with police and fire to make sure that they don't have any additional concerns, that check the lighting in the areas, that kind of thing. So just to maybe tighten them up a little more and feel that and town council review, of course, the final, before approval.
Okay. And just one more, Dean, and I'll go to you. We mentioned the schools and so forth, but that comes under the Monomoy Regional School District. I guess this is a pilot program. The elementary school could be a very, good place for it. Is there any way we should be talking to them, or is it, I'm looking for some way to get them started, unless we just go to them and ask.
You could certainly approach the school and ask for any changes to the lease agreement, but under the agreement, that property is under the control of the school committee, so.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly what they use there. Okay, thank you. Dean, go ahead.
Just apropos of that, I think the school district could simply grant a license back to the town without having to change the lease agreement, if they were so inclined. I just had a question for Jill. Is the intent this summer to re-up with the Chatham Valet at the Eldridge Garage? Does that have to go out for an RFP, or can that be extended?
That was our intention. I don't think it has to go out for an RFP. I think we have one more extension left. Yeah, one year or season extension still remains.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only issue I would have there is, taking up parking, there's parking spaces, but there's a way to cover that. Shereen?
Did we talk about the local option, like the local preference? Do we have any feel for that? I think last time we talked about it, it was that there were several businesses in town that were, maybe looking for opportunity, and we should be supporting local business. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to support local businesses as well. If we get, a deluge of applicants, I would then kind of prioritize the local applicants. I'm kind of waiting to see what the response is by the market here, see how many applicants we really get. If we get 3 and they're all out of town, then so be it. But if we get, 10 and 9 are in town, then good,
Do we need to?
Put it in?
Mr. Chair?
You wanna
Yeah,
put
do we
preference
need-
for
Do we
local?
need to put it into the regulation, and should we be checking with town council prior?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's just the go-to, is to do it that way.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any other comments?
I have one, yeah. I like the idea about the school. the elementary school. That's a good idea, especially when you have the shuttle bus right there and you can grab a sandwich and, get on and get off. Just kidding. But it would be very convenient to have a little food station there as you get off and on that shuttle. Those shuttle rides, make you hungry. Anyway, I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
And then Corey.
Didn't we hear, on the school, didn't we hear from Steve West last week about potential
That's community center, I thought.
community center only?
Yeah, when he.
In the general area, though.
Community center during A's games is what I remember.
During the games.
And I agree with that.
That's what I'm talking
We
about.
shouldn't have a conflict there.
Well, we could explore it. Thanks.
Corey?
I was just going to suggest that Selectman Dykens could find a shuttle vehicle that has like a grill in the back, and they can flip hamburgers and hot dogs and 2 for $1,
They have one.
Oh.
I'd do it. All right, anything else? I'm going to go out to the public. If anyone in the public, we're not here locally, or let's see, I see a couple people on.
There's a
I'm sorry.
couple of people on the phone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Is there a hand up, or who is it?
Yeah, this is Todd Hurl from the Chatham Squire.
Okay, welcome,
Can-
Tom.
can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
So I guess I just wanted to, I'm sitting back and I'm wondering why we're doing this. Because I feel like our objective should be to build a beautiful town, but also a very vibrant downtown that's open throughout the year. And so why are you doing this to your downtown food establishments? All you're doing is hurting them. When they pay the taxes and they pay all the money to be downtown. So I'm wondering, why are we doing this? I mean, nobody wants this in their backyard. And last time I checked, if they don't want it in their backyard, it's not that great. We want food trucks, but at what cost?
Thank you, Tom.
So that's my question.
Well, okay. We
It's
got a
Todd,
couple of hands up
TODD.
here. Do you have anything else? Go ahead.
That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Corey, and then I'll.
No, I understand what Todd is saying, and in the very, very beginning, I kind of felt very similar. But one observation, especially I've made over the last couple seasons, is, there's been plenty of times that kids who have been working for me have tried to call up, either to get a sandwich or go get takeout from a certain, one of our brick and mortars, and they're so busy, it's either an hour wait or they're just shutting off takeout. And sometimes it's just not viable for, there's not enough options out there. So, with that, distinct observation, these kids, kids are calling the same larger names, well-known names out there, and they're like, sorry, we're not doing takeout tonight, don't have an option. So, there's obviously a demand for it. So, that's what shifted my opinion from it. So.
Thank you, Corey. And another
Yeah, I
comment,
understand.
and I may have this wrong, but Ms. Shauna, a lot of this was brought to us by the merchants.
Really, which ones?
The Merchants Association. Go ahead, Shauna. Please, raise your hand if you want to speak, Todd. It's not a problem. I just have to try to control who's speaking, because Shauna was ready to go. Go ahead.
I'm just dialed in, so I can't
Okay, I
raise
get
my
it.
hand, so.
All right. Got it. Go ahead, Shauna.
Yes, the conversations were started with the Chamber of Commerce and the Merchants Association probably, what are we at, 2 years ago now? I think we've been working on this. Certainly have tried to keep all of the food service establishments aware of when the discussions were going to occur and when we had the community forum. So I think we heard pretty overwhelmingly at the forum from the public that this was something that was desired. And we've certainly tried to be respectful to the concerns of the restaurant industry downtown on what their concerns have been.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. Shireen?
And I do want to reiterate, part of what Shauna had presented last week was that we have, we have identified areas within the town that are out of the way of the restaurants, in that there is a setback of area, a dedicated area with a setback of footage, 200 feet, a vendor can't be. They're not going to be on Main Street. This has been, a process we've been going through. We're not there yet, but we are moving forward with the recommendations that we have heard from the public and that we've been vetted at. This is probably our 4th or 5th meeting. And I'm hoping that the downtown community can be supportive of our final decisions.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? I apologize. I do see that there were 2 telephone calls in now. That it's hard to raise your hand on that. Seeing none, Shauna, you comfortable with what you heard when we come back for a final vote?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good job, Shauna.
Yeah, thank you, Shauna.
Nice time. Thank you very much. All right, next up is our Chatham, Orleans, Nauset Beach Agreement. Oh, excuse me, I went ahead. It's PFAS source investigation. Dr. Duncanson, and also I see Gloria's on. Gloria, you can speak. I'll let Dr. Duncanson go first, and then you could speak if you prefer. Go ahead, Dr. Bob.
Good evening, and thank you, members of the board. Yes, as you're all aware, and as we outlined in the agenda report, the town has detected PFAS at various times, at various levels, in 3 of our public water supply wells, well number 4, 5, and 8. Well number 4 has been clean for quite a period of time now, but we are still getting elevated levels of PFAS in wells 5 and 8. And I think the important thing to keep in mind here is when I talk about elevated levels, the state of Massachusetts has what is realistically a very, very low level of what they call PFAS 6, which is 6 of the various components of PFAS. There are a number of different components, but the state of Massachusetts is currently only regulating 6 of those, and they have set a maximum contaminant level, or MCL, of 20 nanograms per liter. And we are detecting levels just at 20 or below 20. So these levels are exceedingly low, and in many cases are pushing the limits of laboratory analysis to be able to detect it. So we are not dealing with things like the town of Barnstable and the county. We're dealing with some of the levels that were detected in the plume from the Fire Training Academy that was up in, the thousands or tens of thousands of nanograms per liter. These levels are exceedingly low in Chatham and are barely above background. So once those levels were detected, wells 5 and 8 were immediately shut down. Well 4 was already shut down because it had been offline since the 1990s due to some PCE contamination that was detected several decades ago. And as a result, there were basically 2 lines of thought. One was to try to determine the source of the PFAS, and then the second was to go ahead and begin the process of remediating it, which is required under Mass DEP regulations, as well as the appropriate thing to do for a public drinking water supply. And so efforts were put into designing treatment facilities for wells 5 and 8, moving forward with the startup of wells 10 and 11, which are 2 new wells for which casings had been put in about a decade ago up in the northern end of the town forest, but then were suspended when some MTBE was detected there. But subsequently, again, we're getting clean water tests coming out of those wells, or out of those sites, if you will. So the town moved forward on bringing those 2 wells online and also providing treatment for 5 and 8, as well as also reactivating well number 4. So all those things were basically the priorities through the fall. There was a special town meeting in the fall to provide funding, and those things are all well on their way now, with engineering either complete and permitting underway, or in the case of well number 4 has now been online for about 2 to 3 months, although at a very low level. And subsequently, or at the same time, basically, continued testing was underway, primarily out of wells 5 and 8, and also occasionally out of well 4, in compliance with DEP regulations, and also to provide the town and the water department or the water division with additional information to design the appropriate engineering fixes. So, and I sent out the latest, most updated PFAS results spreadsheet this afternoon because we just got the quarterly result in from well number 4, which was non-detect. We did not sample wells 5 and 8 at the same time because they're under construction right now, putting in the temporary PFAS treatment facility. And then the other component that we were looking at was to try to determine a source of the PFAS. But as indicated in my memo, determining the source is not an absolute because no matter what the source is, you still have to treat at the wellhead. So it really doesn't matter where it's coming from, you still have to treat it in order to be able to use those wells in accordance with state regulations. But we did put together a RFP, which is ready to go out on the street. Last fall, we did have some conversations with a firm, national firm that has done PFAS investigations around the country. We had some conversations with them. We received a proposal from them, which was fairly substantial. It was not inexpensive to do it. And at the time, you know, there was some question, well, how extensive would it be? Would we look at the entire town? Would we just concentrate on the areas around wells 5 and 8? And then we received another proposal from another firm based on, you know, reading about Chatham's situation in the local newspaper and whatnot. And so we received a second proposal, and the two proposals were drastically different, both in cost as well as the scope of services. And so we felt it was prudent to kind of, you know, take a step back, reevaluate where we were with all the testing, see what it was telling us, and then draft up an RFP that could be issued to do this source investigation once we were comfortable that the remediation efforts for 5 and 8 and 10 and 11 and well 4 were underway. And so that if we did get into another drought situation like we had last summer, the town would have plenty of clean, potable water to provide to its residents. So we've reached that point. So we have drafted up the RFP. We're ready to issue that. And that would get us firm proposals from multiple firms based on all the same scope of services that they would all be bidding on, and as opposed to, you know, one firm suggesting one way to do it and another firm suggesting a different way to do it. I have shared the scope of services. Actually, I shared the entire RFP with Barnstable County staff who have been leading the work that's going on in Barnstable County to look at the PFAS from the Fire Training Academy. And they had some minor comments on our RFP, but they thought otherwise it looked pretty good. And so with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I could take it to the board, or if Gloria had, I know Gloria had a comment last week and was concerned that we weren't going to be moving forward with this, given what was said at the health department. I don't see her hand up, so that's okay. I could go.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, Gloria, welcome.
My hand was up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you know, it's Gloria Freeman. I apologize for my scratchy voice, and thank you for putting this item on your agenda. Dr. Duncanson told the Board of Health at their last meeting that he and the folks downtown are considering the possibility of not conducting a study to find the source of contaminants, particularly PFAS, in our drinking water supply. Last fall, the Select Board agreed to conduct a study addressing the source of these contaminants. Considering the critical nature of improving our potable water supply, it is disappointing to learn that such a study has not already begun, and worse, that it might not happen. It doesn't make sense that we would not be obliged to deal with the source area of contaminants. Source identification should be key to effective remediation. Otherwise, we may be faced with monitoring and mitigation that grow into interminable, expensive treatment. A study to determine the source of contaminants might be expensive, but nothing is more important than our water quality and quantity. I think we need to know the cause of PFAS in our potable water so that there is no reoccurrence. It is not worth the risk of ignoring what has caused and perhaps is causing contamination. A few quick examples. There are many toxic uses and harmful exposures in Commerce Park. We need ongoing inspection, education, and monitoring, but that argument, I guess, is for another day. While we are assured the airport is not responsible for PFAS, it isn't only firefighting foam that could contaminate that area. As you know, for many years, there has been an open dumping ground on airport property. We don't know what hazardous materials are used in both places, and we should know that. Could there have been or be leaking storage tanks? So many possibilities, and we don't know, but I hope that you will want to find out. After all, these places are in our Water Resource Protection District. I don't mean to limit the potential exposures, though, to just those two areas. As I said last week when I requested this agenda item, this should not be a money issue. Our elected town officials and our Board of Health should be directly involved in any decision so we can be sure contaminant concentrations do not happen again, and that human health, water quality, and the environment are protected. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Before I go to Dr. Bob, I have Shireen and then Dean.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. A couple of questions just to educate me. So when we've had, the Eldridge Garage property had groundwater contamination, correct? And it was from gasoline or oil or something, correct? Am I correct?
Yes.
So does PFAS stay stationary in the site that it's contaminated, or does it move around within the water system?
No, it moves around with the groundwater, which on the Cape averages about a foot per day movement.
Okay, and so does the gasoline contaminant at Eldridge Garage do the same kind of have the same kind of activity?
Yes.
Okay.
It moves as well. Yes.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if there was a difference between the elements and the weight of them. All right. Thank you. Do we have hazardous activities going on in Commerce Park? I mean, there's industrial business, but
I don't mean to seem flip, but it's somewhat in how you define it. There are clearly, we have Commerce Park, we have Enterprise Drive. Both of those areas have a number of commercial establishments that use materials that could be hazardous to the groundwater. And by that, I mean, drinking water supplies. They are regulated, they are inspected, they are monitored. The Board of Health had, and we do that primarily through Barnstable County's hazardous materials program. And the Board of Health had an update from them within the last year, I want to say 7 or 8 months ago, on what their program encompassed. Users of hazardous materials above a certain amount are required to file paperwork with the state and federal agencies and also with the local agency to make sure that our fire department is aware of what's going on. So, I mean, in reality, everybody's garage and basement can be a potential source of contaminant.
Can you,
Because we all have things like gasoline, paint thinners, and other materials that, if disposed of improperly, could be problematic.
can you tell me, I think you gave us sort of an overview of where PFAS comes from in our world, all over the world, in the United States, in our region, aside from the firefighter element and what you just mentioned. Can you tell me where else it can come from?
Yeah, PFAS is very commonly used in nonstick coatings. All your nonstick furniture and rugs and your nonstick cooking pans, those all contain PFAS. Things like popcorn bags that are made, for microwave use, those all have PFAS in them. So there is a significantly larger universe of PFAS containing products than, the triple F firefighting foam that's received a lot of publicity in recent years. And I think the average individual would be very surprised to learn about all the things that contain PFAS, which is one reason why, in the absence of a smoking gun, if you will, like the Barnstable County Fire Training Academy, where it was obvious, the use of PFAS, as well as in airports, which for many years used PFAS-containing firefighting foam, not necessarily Chatham, but in other larger commercial airports. The extremely low levels that we are seeing in the Chatham wells, barely at or below the state MCL, could imply that, septic systems may be a source, along with potentially other sites. We've all talked about the airport, Commerce Park and Independence Drive have been mentioned, but however, based on what we know about groundwater and the zones of capture for the wells that we're most concerned about, being 5 and 8, those are outside the capture zones for those particular wells. So that would lead to them not being an actual source. The airport is in close proximity. We are not aware of any illegal dumping yet that has taken place, and I'm assuming Ms. Freeman was referring to the fisherman's storage area. That environmental assessment is underway right now. But again, being the wide universe of things that PFAS could be in, it may be very difficult at the low levels we're dealing with to figure out what the source may be.
So we had a very large dry cleaning factory in this community back up until probably, 1980. Is that something we should be concerned about?
I assume you're referring to the old Acme Laundry site up on Frostfish Creek. Again, that is predominantly outside the capture zone for the wells that we're looking at. The concern up there, the spill that occurred was fuel oil that they used to use to heat the facility. I don't recall there being any other type of contamination at that site beyond the fuel oil contamination. So, while we should be aware of it, there's no indication that may or may not be a source.
So there's only speculation that there might be some particular areas. There's no real indication that we have any spillages anywhere. And so if we go ahead and look at this, have a study and find a source, would we remediate that source at that place, or would we wait to take care of it at the wells, or both?
It would depend on what's found. If we find a location that is if for want of a better term, still a source. In other words, there's significant levels in the ground, say, that would continue to get into the groundwater and migrate towards the wells, we would certainly take a look at cleaning up that area. There are some technologies that could be used. However, if this was an older spill, if something did occur years and years ago, and through, natural precipitation, rain and snow melt and all, it's already kind of leached it all out of the ground, if you will, and into the groundwater and moved it away from the site, then you wouldn't necessarily look at cleaning up the original location because frankly, there'd probably be very little, if anything, left to clean up. So it would depend on what was found.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shereen. Dean?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciated those questions, Shereen, because you covered some of the ground I wanted to ask. I know when we took the vote back last fall, I think it was, that Gloria said, we knew that the potential for locusts was multiple. And yet, we also knew that it would be difficult to pin this down if we were able to at all, because of the contrasting nature that you've pointed out, Bob, between us and what's going on elsewhere on the Cape. But if we were able to identify a source, from your response just now to the question that Shereen asked, what we would do would depend on what we found and what the recommendation of the consulting engineer would be as to it. I appreciate your comments tonight and your memo because I certainly was left with the impression last week that a determination had been made that we weren't going to follow up on this source, but you've clarified that we are going to do that. And I had a conversation with the town manager today, and she corroborated that point. So I appreciate Gloria bringing this forward. The funding for this would come from water rates, not on the tax rate. Is that, Jill?
Mr. Chair, so the funding for the source detection study has been set aside through the town manager's consulting and engineering account, so we have set aside a substantial amount of funds for that.
Okay, all right. I think there was a limitation with respect to other funding sources. We joined the PFAS litigation lawsuit recently. I think the money that could be obtained from a successful settlement of that was probably limited to remediation rather than source identification, but there could possibly be something there if we're ultimately successful to reimburse the town for that. I wanted to sort of close my questions with trying to pin down what areas of town you'd be looking at. We talked about the airport, I think largely not because the board was convinced that the airport was the source of the problem, but because we wanted to reassure the public who were raising questions about that. Bob, how do you see us, where do you see us focusing the locus or locuses, loci of this particular study, or has that been determined yet?
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that we were taking our time to do because when this topic originally came up, it was kind of like, well, let's look at the entire town. And, that could get very expensive very quickly. And frankly, based on the initial data that we had, it wasn't called for. We weren't seeing PFAS in the wells in the town forest area. So there was really no reason to go looking in those areas because we weren't detecting anything. And so what we've done in the RFP is we have narrowed it down to basically the capture zones for wells 4, 5, and 8. And so those portions of the zone 2s that are generated by those wells and look at, the land uses within that area both current and historic, to try to see if we can find a potential source in that area. It really doesn't make sense to look at, Nickerson's Neck or, East Chatham or Morrison Stage Islands, because those certainly are not contributing to what's ending up in wells 4, 5, and 8. And the same thing with the whole town forest area. If there was PFAS in that area, we would be detecting it in wells 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 9. And we now have a year's worth of data with pretty much non-detects, or no, I shouldn't say pretty much, with non-detects in all those areas over, many months of sampling of those areas. And so that, the time frame actually helped us narrow it down to say, rather than doing the entire town, we're going to concentrate in the area that is most likely contributing to those wells.
Did you say earlier that the airport is outside the capture area of 5 and 8 and 4, or 5 and 8?
No, the airport would be within the capture zone of wells 4, 5, and 8.
So that would be,
And that's been one of the things that's been a little surprising. I've had multiple people tell me it's the airport, pointing the finger at the airport for various reasons. Considering well 4 is closer to the airport than wells 5 and 8 are, you would think if the airport were the source, that we would be picking it up more consistently in well 4 than we are. Now, it's perfectly possible that the airport was a source some time ago. And then as we indicated, groundwater moves at about a foot per day. Well 4 has been shut down since 1993. And we were pumping wells 5 and 8 pretty much at maximum capacity, especially last year during the drought. So if there was a discrete plume or a slug of PFAS from some prior occurrence, it's possible that, it's been moved beyond the capture zone to well 4 and closer to 5 and 8. And so that's, part of what the consultant will be charged at looking at the capture zones, looking at groundwater. We have very good groundwater modeling on the Cape, thanks to the USGS. Looking at the travel time, if you pinpoint it at this location, how long would it take to get from that location to, say, wells 5 and 8? And by knowing all that, we could potentially narrow down a potential source and then determine whether or not there's any residual contamination at that location that could be cleaned up.
so, and looking at the airport, I do recall we were told, I think by the fire chief, if not others, that there was only one incident in recent memory, well, in long memory, where the firefighting foam was used. The airport examination will include the fisherman's storage area as well, I guess.
Yes.
And you said that there's already a feasibility study going on there.
We already have an environmental site assessment underway at the fisherman's storage area as part of the closure. It's not specifically looking at PFAS, it's looking at the potential for any contaminant that's been discharged or dumped there over the years. So it's basically looking at all the land uses, well, not the land uses, but the uses that were there, and taking a look at historic information to know whether or not, was it fuel oil, was it some PFAS material, who knows? But the environmental site assessment looks at the entire range of potential contaminants.
Bob, you were very much involved intimately with the Eldridge Garage, I'll call it cleanup, because it really wasn't a significant item that was undertaken before the town acquired it from Mr. Oppenheim's group. And Shireen asked a question about it. As I recall, we were told that gasoline basically evaporates over time, so that doesn't tend to spread. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correctly? And would that be true of fuel oil?
Well, gasoline is a lot lighter than fuel oil. Gasoline would not necessarily evaporate if it was in the groundwater because it's not really exposed to the air. Gasoline will evaporate, if you have a surface spill or something like that, yes, a bright, sunny, windy day is a great help. once it gets into the groundwater, though, it generally doesn't evaporate. There will be some biodegradation, so there are bacteria in the ground that can chew up gasoline and can chew up diesel fuel. When Eldridge Garage and the same thing at the Acme Laundry, they were actively cleaned up to a certain point. There was still some residual contamination left that frankly is, based on our current technologies, impossible to physically remove, if you will. And so what happens is you basically, sometimes you add bacteria or you add nutrients through wells to the site. And we did the same thing up at the old fire station site with some contamination that was found there. And you basically supercharge those bacteria to break down any remaining contaminant, because some of it adheres to the ground, the soil particles, and you physically can't get it to move to a well and suck it back out. And so you enhance those natural processes to break down the remaining contaminants so that over a period of time, you basically get down to background levels.
Just tangentially, is the monitoring period for Eldridge Garage completed by now? Wasn't it like a 2 years out? That must be done by now.
Yes, that was completed, and DEP gave it a finding of no further action required.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the presentation, for answering my questions. I thank Gloria Freeman again for bringing this forward, and I think we're moving in the right direction on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff, and then Corey.
Yeah, thank you. And many of the questions I had have been answered, Bob. Great presentation and a great summary memo. I had a question about the historical kind of test wells that we've drilled in that area at Indian Hill and Training Field in the general area. Will they be assistive in our effort to try to locate PFAS? Are we going to use those old monitoring wells again, or are we going to drill new ones as we kind of drill around here to see if we can locate the source?
No, we have one of the two proposals that we got last fall had a heavy emphasis on utilizing the existing monitoring well network, because there are a plethora of monitoring wells between the airport, the annex site, Indian Hill well, wells 5 and 8, and others. There's a lot of monitoring wells. So one of the proposals that we had made significant use of all those wells. And that's one of the reasons why, honestly, it was as expensive as it was. The other proposal didn't advocate using any monitoring wells. They were basically going to do more of a tabletop, kind of exercise to identify potential sources. In the RFP that we've put together, we've developed somewhat of a hybrid of that. It's a tabletop paper exercise to go through all the existing information that we have, identify potential sources, and then recommend a groundwater monitoring or soil monitoring plan based on all the existing wells. So, depending on what they find as a potential, say, source location, which wells would it make the most sense then to sample? And then, how often would we sample them? When would they be sampled? What analyses would be undertaken? We felt that was a better approach than just, going out blindly and sampling, an area that has a huge number of monitoring wells already existing. So I wouldn't anticipate having to drill any new monitoring wells, unless the information points us in a direction where, for one of, I don't know why, we just don't have any particular monitoring wells in that area. If it comes from a direction that, is kind of not off the map, but, outside, say, the airport or the annex or, those areas, if it's in a slightly different direction and we don't have any monitoring wells there, we may have to drill some new ones, who knows? But that's what this study would help us define.
Okay, thank you. That's super. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Corey?
Well, I have one other. Is there any way we can get data on PFAS levels in other towns? I know Barnstable's got a heck of a problem. Barnstable, Hyannis, maybe Mashpee as well, but is there any, I'd like to put in some context, just, not that I'm not concerned about the PFAS levels here in Chatham, I'd just like to see what kind of other struggles other towns are having. So if we could get that data, that'd be great, Bob, thanks.
Yeah, I can certainly reach out to some counterparts and get some of that information, yes.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
Oh, thank you, Peter. No, I mean, I'll make my comments relatively simple. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, but, I mean, a lot of this is a policy decision from, in my opinion, and I don't want us to stray away, too far away from a source investigation, approach. It shouldn't really be about money in the process, because if we don't have clean drinking water, that's where it gets really, really, really expensive. I know a lot of people have pointed fingers. The airport has been one of the probably top of the list items you get your finger pointed to. People forget also too, we had the mosquito control storage area down the street, and we used to have a airport lumber on the site we're sitting in now. So there were a lot of other entities in the area, the general area, that may not have contributed to any of this. So, I don't want to be short-sighted and pointing fingers too quickly, but I do support, keeping the source investigation component as part of this process. But I do think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. I don't see anything else. I'll just end with these comments. Thank you, Dr. Bob. It was an interesting discussion, and I think it's appropriate that we went through this, and I thank Gloria for bringing it up. A number of issues. If we all recall back when PFAS first raised its head, we as a board, and never mind us as a board, but the whole town took on with drinking water quality as our top priority. I mean, and that just makes common sense. And to readdress it now is a good idea, and I agree. We're moving in a direction I think that is appropriate, especially, and I was a little concerned when I heard that we may not be moving towards looking at a source investigation. But thank you, Dr. Bob, for bringing this all up, and thank you again, Gloria. Any other comments from the board? Not? Thank you again. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is Chatham Orleans Nauset Beach Agreement. Don't leave, Dr. Bob. We'll start with you, and then we'll have Jeff and then Shireen make a couple of comments.
Yes, thank you again. So as you know, we have the agreement with Orleans. The last couple of years, it's been a one-year agreement each year. It's up for expiration at the end of this month. And so I've been in touch with my counterpart in Orleans to jumpstart the process for moving ahead with renewal, and asked them several times to say, hey, if you guys are going to propose any changes to the agreement, we need to know about it so they can be discussed in Chatham, and then we need to have the joint meeting between the two boards and agree what direction to head in. So I did finally receive some information from Orleans, and that was included in the red line of the Nauset Beach agreement that was in your packet. And basically what Orleans was proposing is in section 7 under revenue distribution. The way the agreement's read in the past is that Chatham keeps obviously all the permit fees that we charge to Chatham residents. Orleans keeps the fees that they charge to Orleans residents. And then all the fees that are charged to non-residents were split 25% to Chatham and 75% to Orleans. And so that's the way the agreement has been written the last couple of years. And this year, Orleans proposed to basically retain that split, but to put a $75,000 cap on how much Chatham got out of the agreement. So it would be 25% or $75,000, whichever is less. And the primary one of the primary reasons that Orleans did that was they significantly raised the rates last year. So starting on July 1st of 2022, and we discussed this last year at this time, Orleans significantly raised their rates. And for non-residents, out-of-town OSVs went up to $370. And then on top of that, the $16 surcharge. And for a self-contained vehicle, it went up to $450 with the $16 surcharge. So that, resulted in a fairly significant change to the amount of revenue that was in play, if you will. And that was reflected this year for Chatham in the fact that from Orleans in FY 2022, we received almost $110,000 from Orleans, representing our split of 25% of the non-resident fees collected so far in FY 2022. And that compares with FY 21, when we received $74,000 from Orleans, and in FY 20, we received $41,000. So you can see a fairly substantial change due to that substantial increase in the fees. So the subcommittee met, they discussed it, and I'll let Shireen and Jeff chime in on that discussion. The other things that we also wanted to get board input on is, one of the things that has changed as well is Orleans also raised their resident fees last year up to $120 for an Orleans resident, plus the $16 surcharge. Well, Chatham, we have most recently increased our fees back in 2018, where we went from $40 to $60 for Chatham residents. And we have not raised our resident fees since that time. So there was also some discussion about whether or not, as part of this discussion, we should be looking at the Chatham fees in terms of raising them potentially. And then the final thing was, as I mentioned at the beginning, the agreements have lately been for 1-year time periods. They used to be for 3 years. However, after the 2007 breach and the uncertainty over the beach and some other conditions, there was a change from a 3-year to a 1-year agreement. We were of the opinion that beach conditions have stabilized, and so there was no reason not to return back to a 3-year agreement. And so that's what we included in the red line that was provided as part of your packet. And then just the other thing is, one of the complaints, if you will, that Orleans had several years ago was, there was no accounting for vehicles in Chatham. We were relying on anecdotal evidence that, a significant number of the beach users were coming down into Chatham, and especially recently. So for 2020 and 2021, we have done beach counts, and last year we also took some aerial photos, which I can show if the board is interested, of a day on the beach in Chatham and how many vehicles were in Chatham versus how many of those were in Orleans, and also a breakdown of residents, non-residents, and self-contained vehicles. And that information was all provided to the board as part of your packet. And so with that, I will finish my presentation and let Shireen and Jeff, as your representatives to the Nauset Beach Agreement Working Group, provide their comments.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bob. We'll start with Jeff and then Shireen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Bob, once again. A vibrant subcommittee meeting. Dr. Bob, Shireen, myself, Bob Long was there, Alex was there. The impetus to change, there's 3 issues, basically, as Bob just summarized. The split of the monies, the length of the term, and how we go about our business down there. And I tell you right now, there's no reason for the town of Chatham to forego $35,000. So we don't agree with their suggestion that we cap. We do a cap at 75. Basically, we'd be foregoing $35,000. On the fees to the town, on our resident stickers, we didn't want to raise fees last year. We had this discussion here. And so we did not raise fees at all last year. Orleans is at $120, we're at $60, so they're literally double what we are for a resident. we had some discussion about maybe tweaking that a little bit to go north a little bit, but we were very reluctant to go fully to 120. We just don't think it's right. It just doesn't feel good. And then finally, there's no reason not to have a longer-term agreement. The core of this issue is, if you take a look at those pictures and you look at the data on our counts, and they did counts, kind of informal counts, but good counts in August and then in September and October. Especially in August and in the warm months, Chatham residents are about 15 or 16% of the users of the beach. So 84% of the folks that are in Chatham Beach, if you will, on Nauset Beach are either Orleans residents and/or self-contained vehicles or OSV vehicles. So our folks are there 15, 16%. So, we're sharing our beach the way we should and are, but yet they're asking us to forego a bunch of revenue. So we just think that's patently unfair, and it doesn't make much sense. So we're going to meet with them on the 27th, I guess, and have a discussion, but we recommend that we not accept those terms and that we discuss how we might counter those terms. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Jeff. Shereen?
So I spoke with one of our Orleans counterparts today, and I let him know that we'd be speaking on this issue tonight, and that our subcommittee would be recommending to the board. What we had come up with was that we weren't going to accept the proposal to cap the amount for Chatham. And so the conversation was really a good one. And he gave some background on their new funding, their enterprise fund, that they wanted to make sure it was self-funded and whatnot. And this is why they had come up with this particular amount. The amount, what I found interesting is I asked him if the board itself had voted on this particular proposal to come to us first. And he said, no, it was working notes and that it was recommended by staff. And the first time that they would be voting on it and discussing it would be at the meeting on the 27th. So I let him know that we had data to share. He's very appreciative of that. He'd really like to be able to see that prior, that his board does get their hands on our, the packet that we had here, if this board is, to send it over to staff and have them share it prior to the meeting, because I think it paints a really good picture of where we're coming from. He also said that he was appreciative of that, and he was amenable to the further discussions on the number. And so I just also want to say that he was extremely complimentary that the town of Chatham's following through with the enforcement, and it's consistent with the agreement that we put together last year or 2020, Bob. I can't remember when we decided to patrol the beach ourselves, but I'm not sure he might be frozen.
It was like 2 years.
2 years ago.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I think it was 2018 or
2018.
2019.
So anyway,
We
so,
took over the enforcement.
this was one board member speaking to one board member. This certainly wasn't a policy setting discussion at all, but I did feel that we had a discussion with our counterparts prior to going in. This isn't going to be an adversarial conversation. I think we're all looking at the same sort of thing, and we, once we vote our recommendation, I'd like the information to be sent over to them for their review prior to our meeting.
Thanks, Shereen. Jeff, and then Dean and Corey, and I'm going to make a comment before that.
One quick comment. I think the sentiment or the consensus of the subcommittee was, we keep the percentage the same. I think an argument could be made that we could even push a little north of 25%, but 25% I think has worked pretty well. There's really no impetus to change. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a comment. Just by reading what's here and looking at the maps that Dr. Bob had, maybe it'd be worthwhile putting that up a little bit in a little while, just so to show what it looks like. My initial thought was that there was an individual that said, I may have a dark side, and I'll tell you, if looking at both sides of the issue and highlighting some of the negative stuff is a dark side, then so be it. But to cap us at a certain amount because they raised the price just does not make sense when most of the people are coming to quote our beach. They're the gatekeepers. I understand that, but that doesn't change that the fact, at least the way I see it, is they raised their rates so they could be self-funding. I understand that. That's not going to change. Just because we get a little bit more, maybe it will a little bit, but I mean, it's the beach that they're coming to is the one that's the most productive for the people that are going to be there, and that's the one in Chatham. Okay, it was Dean and then Corey.
Thank you. I appreciate the update from everybody, and I support the recommendations of the subcommittee with respect to the agreement. But just so I understand it, and if you're a non-resident, you have to go to Orleans to buy the sticker, right? You don't buy that from the town of Chatham.
That's correct.
So
Chatham, we only sell Chatham resident stickers. We do not sell to out-of-towners.
And they're charging how much for that non-resident sticker? Is it 120 or is it more?
No, for a non-resident sticker, it was, sorry, I just had the number.
300?
For a non-resident, an out-of-town non-resident, it is $370 plus a $16 surcharge, so $386.
So Orleans is charging 370 plus to a non-resident. And 84% of the people, from anecdotal observation, that are using the Chatham Beach are non-residents. So
Yeah.
I remember last year, we were talking about requesting more than 25%, and for reasons of comedy between the two towns, we decided to stay with 25, and I understand that's the recommendation. I just don't see any justification for capping this at all. I did have one question, and Jeff brought up whether, the town of Chatham should raise its rates to Chatham residents. We did have that discussion last year. And if you look at the numbers, for FY '22, the revenue that we got from this whole thing was $125,000. That includes, I think, the money we get from non-resident stickers as well that are sold by
Yes.
Orleans. But
Yes.
the appropriation for the town was out of tax monies, I believe, was $174,000. So there's a significant subsidy that the taxpayers are giving to this. Now, there's nothing wrong with subsidizing, recreational activity, because we do that in other regards. But I think, it's probably fair to the taxpayers that we do consider whether we might want to increase the Chatham resident fee. And I just throw it out for discussion. I'm anxious to hear from I know Bob's here. I don't know if anybody has any comment on that point, but I'll throw that out.
Okay, and Corey, and Bob's been involved with this for a long time. He wasn't here when I made the comment. If you want to speak, Bob? No, if you do, I'll ask the board if it's all right, and I would assume, given okay. Corey, and then Bob, if you'd like to.
Just a couple comments, and first of all, I want to, very much appreciate the work our subcommittee has put into this conversation. We've been doing this on an annual basis, literally on an annual basis. I capping the percentage as highlighted in this red line position, it's not something I could support whatsoever. And actually, I think we can make a strong argument to increase the percentage. I'm assuming because they were looking at capping it, a conversation of having it, say, 25% in year one, and by year three going up to a higher percentage probably never actually occurred. Did anything like that ever happen? Because I think maybe if we do a 3-year, fine, year one's 25, year two goes to 30, year three 30, or tier it up a little bit so at the end of the third year we get a little bit better percentage. I think would be also a fair way of approaching it. So I look forward to the 27th, and hopefully we can work this out, that we can get a 3-year extension where all parties are relatively satisfied that we've got this done for another 3 years.
Okay, thanks, Corey. Dean, and then back to Shereen.
Just a technical point, I forgot, it's not a minor point. It certainly wouldn't have been minor point to Florence Selden. It says Board of Selectmen, it should be corrected to updated to Select Board. I don't know what town of Orleans calls their board.
Select Board.
They do. So that nomenclature should change. Thank you.
Good point. Shereen?
So before we go forward with this, we do have to come to some sort of understanding of what if this board does support a rate increase, or whether we're just going to go in. If we're negotiating, or we're in the spirit of negotiation, and they have put this at a cap, then, we come back, as Corey had recommended, with an incremental percentage increase. It might be a way of negotiating, or we just come back as being, this is what we want and this is what we're going to do.
You mean an increment, Mr. Chairman, an incremental increase
In
in
the
what we get from them?
Right, that's what Corey was proposing, yeah.
Because it would seem to me that what we charge our Chatham people is, and that's not what you're talking about, I understand.
No.
But if Orleans has anything to say about what we charge our own people, because we haven't raised our rates since, 2018, that's really none of their business, I think.
Correct.
They think somehow we're profiting from these resident stickers, and it looks like they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good point. Jeff, did you want to have a comment?
No, I'm good.
Bob. Okay, Bob, just make sure you introduce yourself when you first get up.
Bob Long, a non-resident taxpayer, former chairman of the North Beach Advisory Committee and past president of the Massachusetts Beach Buggy Association. I've been at most of these meetings going back for, I can't even tell you how many years, and it gets frustrating to have to kind of rehash it all over again. Directly related to the Chatham resident permit fees, Scott Morris, who's a colleague of mine, a good friend, and is also usually participating in these, mentioned to me today, and he brought up a good point. Orleans still has the north side. They, I think, can justify charging their residents quite a bit more because they have a beach that pretty much stays open year-round. They rarely have to lose their beach. Chatham residents, unfortunately, get penalized by Orleans having to shut the beach down sooner than it ever would have to be shut down in Chatham. We just don't have access anymore because we can't get through Orleans. So our residents actually wind up kind of paying the price for Orleans shutting down the beach earlier than than Chatham would have to shut it down. Another point to make is when Orleans opens back up, we're lagging a little bit behind, so we still don't have access to Chatham even once the beach opens back up. So we get it at the beginning of the season where we leave the beach earlier than we normally would because Orleans can't provide access to it. And then we lose it a little later into the season because our nesting habitat, the nesting habits of the birds in Chatham tend to be a little delayed, usually by a week or two. So that's just something that's more relevant to that. It was already brought up, obviously, that what Chatham decides to charge their residents it's irrelevant to Orleans, basically. Chatham can do what they want to do on that. So I don't even think it really needs to be part of the discussion. But if they do bring it up, I wanted to make that point that Scott had made to me today. Secondly, because their board has not even discussed this ahead of time, it is not entering the meeting that we're going to be going into jointly with the position. At this point, it's kind of premature, I think, for the board to have to come to a consensus on a position this evening, at least formally. That's just my opinion, since it's still yet to be determined. So I guess I'd be careful not to commit to too much in this evening's meeting and just leaving your options open going into that other one. Obviously, I wouldn't support a $75,000 cap. I don't think there's any, I understand potentially some of their reasoning behind it having to do with their budgeting, but there's no reason to penalize Chatham residents and Chatham taxpayers by doing something like that, considering 84% of the users in the Chatham Beach gave their money to Orleans. So I think the argument can be made that number could go up above 25%. I like the idea of something like a tiered approach, going multiple years versus trying to do more at once. I do think that might impede some of the discussion for a multi-year agreement, but all along, we've been trying to get back to a multi-year agreement, and with the condition that we can revisit the money part of it, that really seems to be the only thing that we have to hash out every year. There aren't any major rule changes, there aren't policy changes. We're really talking about the money every year. So let's get an agreement that we can just do 3 years. And then if either town feels they need to bring up the monetary aspect, they can do so. So that would be my only comments for this evening. And I do appreciate the courtesy of the board and the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. That's very good. Any other comments? So we're going to be meeting with them next Wednesday. And that's on our future agenda. Go ahead.
What time?
I don't have it right in front of me.
6:30, I think.
That's a Zoom meeting?
I have it as 5:30.
Oh, 5:30, okay.
That's a Zoom meeting or a Team Microsoft meeting, or whose platform is that on?
Go ahead, Shauna.
They'll be sending a Zoom link.
Say that again. I couldn't hear you,
They'll be
Shauna.
sending a Zoom link to us.
Okay.
Are they still meeting remotely?
No, but they do have the remote option for anyone who prefers.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Anything else? Corey?
Do we want to go over there in person?
Yeah.
I would actually support some of that.
I'm fine. I mean, it's,
If they're taking audience members for other business, then I'm happy to go over there and talk with them face to face. I think it'd be a little more maybe appropriate for the topic.
it's, well, it's,
Can we reach out?
what do you think? I mean, is there a,
Yeah, no,
Well, it's-
I don't mind going over it at all.
But let's make sure that our agenda, this is their first business agenda item, and then we don't
Yeah.
have to wait around for a whole lot of stuff if we're going to go to Orleans.
yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, if they can accommodate that, since we're going to have 5 people over there.
They've done it before.
Yeah, they have.
And if we do, we should post our meeting for us. God forbid we had to step into the hallway. We did that before, years ago. We posted a meeting and then we stepped to the side for a little conference.
Okay.
We did. Yep.
Well, we would have to, if we go over there, we would have to be, it's a public, I mean, it's a meeting, it's a real meeting. We have to have a roll call and so forth, so,
Yes.
Yep.
yeah, so that's,
And if we need to confer, we can step aside to confer.
sure, I don't see any problem with that. I mean, it's normal, it's business.
Yes, there is a problem, right? If a majority of this board confers in the.
At a posted meeting of the select board.
But if a majority of the select board at the
Off-site?
meeting goes off in the hallway and convenes and discusses, that's a violation of the open meeting law unless members of the public are going to be in that same grouping.
Well, that's why I'm saying, can't we post a separate Chatham Select Board meeting to be held, at that site, which would be in compliance?
Well, we'd have to still do it in
Check with town
public.
council, but I thought we could if we state the time, location, and purpose of that meeting, we're in compliance.
But
Yeah, but what Dean
if
was
you're
saying,
if you're on the panel, that's fine, that posting will cover. But what Peter is positing is I think you too, Corey, that you might have, so there's a joint discussion with the other board, and then we want to regroup and caucus, as it were. That caucus has to be public. So I don't think that's covered by that meeting unless we're going to be in a public area
I
where,
mean, we can't do that here.
no.
No, but I can't remember what we did the last time. Did we just?
We went out in the hallway.
We went out in the hallway.
We went out in the hallway.
I cannot remember what we did last time.
Yes.
All right, so we'll consult with town council on
How to
how
do
to
it.
allow for the board to caucus if you need to deliberate amongst yourselves in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob. Okay, that takes care of that. Thank you, Dr. Bob. If you're still there.
You're welcome. Yep, I'm still here.
Got it. Thank you. Let's see, now we have consider, excuse me, consider approval and release of executive session minutes, and we did this the last time. And, let's see, any open discussion first, or would you like me to go down and read it like I did the last time? Go ahead. For a motion, yeah. Go ahead, Corey.
There was only, I don't know when you want, there was only one edit I would suggest on any of them, and I don't, do you want to do
Let's
it when
do
we
that.
get down to it? It's the very last set of minutes.
Oh, it is?
Yes,
Well, let me
so-
go through it, then when you get to that one, we'll talk.
Sounds
about it,
perfect.
okay? All right. Okay, we have a number of them, 8 of them, and the first 2 are really incorporated in the agenda under the first in our agenda item, but that, it really doesn't make that much difference. Okay, I move that we approve and release executive session minutes first. Number 1, property acquisition, Veterans of Foreign Wars Post, 150 George Ryder Road, April 22nd, 2019, and May 6th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Take a vote. Shereen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
The chair says aye. Number 2, I move to approve and release executive session minutes for property acquisition, Chatham Fish Pier Market / Baylor property, November 5th, 2018, and March 18th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Shireen?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Number 3, move to approve and release executive session minutes on property acquisition, Land Bank, Goose Pond Road, January 28, 2019.
Second.
Discussion, seeing none. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And number 4, property acquisition, 7 Champlain Road, December 10th, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Shireen?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Property acquisition, 365 Main Street, August 3rd, 2016.
Second.
Any discussion? Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Approve and release of executive session minutes on litigation, Beatty et al. Versus Town of Chatham. And it's a reconsideration of the 1997 taking of Stage Harbor Road, Battlefield Road, Cedar Street, Champlain Road, Port Fortune Lane, Sears Road, and Stage Neck Road / annual town meeting vote of 2019 on January 7th, 2019, January 7th, 2019 minutes.
Second.
Second?
Second.
And we have any discussion? Okay, vote. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Approve and release of move to approve and release of executive session minutes on litigation, Eversource, use of herbicide, September 12th, 2017.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And finally, move to approve and release of executive session minutes on litigation. I guess it's Shuey, December 16th, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion? Corey?
My only suggestion is minor pickup is on the second page under the paragraph by the motion. The vote is recorded as a 4-1 vote with Selectman Roper dissenting. I would just suggest that it be formatted with the roll call. Yes, yeas and nays, to be consistent with all the other documents.
Yeah.
Yes, so what you're saying, we're
minute.
sure we
It'd
took a
be-
roll call vote, it just wasn't presented in the minutes.
Correct. I mean, you can backtrack and say Selectman Summers voted do this way and
Yeah.
Selectman so-and-so, but I just format
Got
it, just recorded.
Yeah, I see. Okay. All right. We have Jeff.
Yes, in the attending line, we have one chairman too many in the same set of minutes.
Okay. Got that?
Okay.
You all right, Shauna? Have that? Okay, great. All right, we had a motion and a second vote with the amended amendments. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And that completes the approval of executive session minutes, and we have the final committee appointments to the Culturals and Summer Residence. And Summer Residence Committee. All right, first up is, we have Cultural Council. We have one vacancy to June 30th, 2023. We interviewed Kathleen Joslin for the Cultural Council on April 7th.
Mr. Chair,
Have a motion.
I move to appoint Kathleen Joslin to the Cultural Council until June 30th, 2023, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second discussion, seeing none. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Another one is the Summer Residence Advisory Committee, one associate vacancy until June 30th, 2022. We interviewed Stuart Green on April 7th, 2022. A motion.
Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
I move to appoint Stuart Green to the Summer Residence Advisory Committee as an associate until June 30th, 2023.
2023. Got it.
Second.
Second on that. Any other discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. Shireen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye, and I'll make a comment. Like many of our appointees, these were just excellent interviews and excellent people for it. And then thank you, Chatham, for providing good applicants. In any case, that concludes our public part of our meeting tonight. I want to thank you, Chatham, and have a good rest of the week. And we need a motion.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, good point.
I have a question. The agenda does not say no return to open session.
I said it
Should
up
it have?
front, but
So you can say that in your motion. I don't think it's going to affect the
Is that,
executive session.
is that because the rest of the agenda has already been dealt with? There's no reason to go back, or is? I
It
mean,
might
I
have just
can't
been a
imagine-
cut and
I
paste
don't-
from something else.
What do we usually say?
Believe you can just read it into the motion
Yeah.
with no return to open
With
session.
no return to open session, but it usually says that in the,
well, we can come, if we want to be safe, we'll finish the executive session, come back and open and close again.
but it doesn't.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
I-
say it either way. I mean, we usually say either way, whatever it is.
I don't believe it's a requirement. We just add it in so that it can be read off.
Well, with town council, that's who the executive session is with. If he advises us,
Is he on the phone right now?
he's not in this meeting, he's in the executive session.
Well, I'll offer the motion. I'm not
Okay.
making any guarantees. I'll offer the motion. You're going to introduce the agenda item, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So this is, I move that, this is agenda item number 4, executive session, MGL Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 3. Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy regarding to pending litigation, parenthesis, Shiaba Construction Fish Pier contract claims, close parenthesis, and the chair declares that an open meeting would be detrimental to the litigating position of the public body with no return to open session.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, if we have legal counsel in the executive session and we come back, we
You
would,
want to just pause and I'll call him to see if he can answer this question? I don't know if he can join the meeting. Yeah.
that's a good idea. Let's do that rather than.
I do want to note that in the introduction to the agenda item, it does say immediately following the open sessions.
Yeah, and I made a comment at the beginning that we were not returning, but let's be fair, let's do it right.
At the top of the, up top here, top of the agenda item. Presentation packet, Jeff. Yes. Yeah, not the open public meeting.
Hi, Pat, we're still in open session. There's a question about the motion going into executive session, so can I put you on speakerphone? Okay, if you want to look at it, it's the last item on the agenda, and what's not included on the posted agenda, it doesn't say with no return to open session. So please, give me 1 second, I'll stick you on speaker. Okay, can you hear us, Pat?
I can, yes.
I don't know if you guys, can you hear?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So Pat, any concern going into executive session with a motion that includes and no return to open session, or would you advise not?
I would explicitly just note that as part of the motion, that there will be no return to executive session. I think that's set aside for obligation.
Okay.
That's what we did.
You did. Okay, so now we're about to take a vote, and we'll see you soon. Pat, bye.
Okay, now we're available for a vote. Good, thank you. Shereen?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye, and thank you again, Chatham, and have a good week.